May 27th, 2020 meeting of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, and Placer County Local Transportation Authority. We're conducting this meeting via teleconference under Executive Order N-29-20 approved by Governor Newsom on March 17th, 2020. We appreciate your participation and patience with this technology. A recording of this meeting will be posted to our website after the meeting. For public comment, there will be multiple opportunities throughout this meeting for public comment. When I open up an item for public comment, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you'd like to make a public comment on this item. If you're joining the webinar on your computer, you can do so by clicking the raise hand button on the middle bottom of the Zoom webinar window. If you're joining over the phone, you can do so by pressing *9. PCTPA staff will then be calling out individuals who have raised their hand, giving them permission to speak one by one. When you are called, please state your full name, city of residence. You will then be given 3 minutes to provide your public comment, and PCTPA staff will notify you when your 3 minutes are up. If you experience technical difficulties and are unable to provide your public comment, please email your comments to SylvieSable at ssabol@pctpa.net. Board action. Because this item is being conducted via teleconference, all votes will be roll call votes. Board members will be asked to state their name prior to making a motion or seconding a motion for the record. Once an item has been moved and seconded, we will request the clerk call for a roll call vote. All right, thank you, and please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. 1 second. All right, so you can go ahead and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
All right. Allard?
Here.
Baker?
Here.
Broadway? Broadway? Burris?
Here.
Holmes?
Here.
Joyner?
Here.
Mackey?
Here.
Euler?
Here, but I'm not telling you where here is.
Okay.
All right.
We don't need to know that, Kirk. He's in the governor's waiting room.
Okay, that was funny.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item C, approval of the action minutes for the April 22nd, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Director Holmes moves. Joyner second.
All right, Sylvia, will you call for the vote?
Allard?
Yes.
Baker?
Aye.
Broadway? Burris?
Aye.
Holmes?
Aye.
Joyner?
Yes.
Mackey?
Aye.
Euler?
And we do have Broadway on the call. I'm not sure if he's having issues coming off of mute. Ken, are you unable to unmute? Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. We can see you talking, but we can't hear you. Okay. All right, well, we will continue on. We'll move to item D, agenda review. Does anybody wish to make any adjustments to the agenda order at this time?
I have none.
And if not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda order?
Move approval, Allard.
Second, Holmes.
Sylvia, will you call the vote?
Allard?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Broadway?
Yes.
Okay. Burris,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Euler.
Aye.
All right, moving on to item E, public comment. This is the part of the meeting where we will take public comment on any items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment at this time?
Madam Chair, I am seeing no public comment at this time.
All right, beautiful. Well, we will go ahead and move along then. Moving to item F, consent calendar, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Does anybody wish to have any of the items removed?
Not I.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Move consent, Holmes.
Allard, second.
All right, Sylvia, will you call the vote?
Allard,
Yes.
Baker,
Aye.
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Euler.
All right, moving on to item G, consent calendar for the Airport Land Use Commission Planning Agency. These items are again expected to be routine and non-controversial, and they'll be acted upon at one time by the board without any discussion. At this time, would any board members or any members of the public wish to pull any items?
I have none.
All right, can I get a motion?
Move approval.
Allard,
Second.
second.
Allard,
Yes.
Baker,
Aye.
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Euler.
Aye.
All right, moving to item H, Placer County Local Transportation Authority Transportation Improvement Plan and Retail Transactions and Use of Tax Ordinance.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This morning we have back before you the consideration of the ordinance to the first reading of the ordinance to place a transportation sales tax measure on the ballot. So back in March, we were presented with a poll by FM3, our polling firm, which was the 9th poll, which showed an increase of 10 points, or which showed an increase in some of our areas, but showed a decrease in other areas. And at that point, our board took the tact of moving in a very methodical manner. At the same time, we started the issues with the beginnings of the COVID crisis, kind of simultaneously with the preparation of that poll. And so our board, with great concern, decided to move along a very slow and deliberate path of getting us closer to the ability to consider the matter on the ballot, but really with checkpoints to see if we should move forward with this for November of 2020 or consider a future date such as November of 2022. So in order to do that, because we were on a timeline as set forth by the elections office of the county, what we had to do is to continue on in terms of having the city councils and board of supervisors within the county consider the expenditure plan, so what the money would be spent on if there were to be a transportation sales tax. And at the time of the April meeting, a number of our agencies had considered and unanimously approved those, with the exception of the city of Auburn and the city of Lincoln. And so our board took action to delay by 1 month essentially everything on our work plan with respect to the sales tax measure, to give Auburn a chance and Lincoln a chance to consider that expenditure plan. And they did. Auburn approved unanimously on April 27th, and Lincoln approved unanimously on the 12th of May, the expenditure plan. As we highlighted at the last meeting, some of the agencies had some additional items that they wished if we got to the point of actually implementing a sales tax measure that we would have to address, and those being how the county connecting roads would be considered, and to define the terms of direct benefit and a number of other things within the ordinance. But at the same time, all of our city councils and boards of supervisors throughout the county, which is required by our enabling legislation for sales tax measures, had to consider and had to approve. So we did get unanimous approval from all of those jurisdictions. Again, with the caveat that we are in extremely unique times, and we have to make a very deliberate decision of whether to move forward or not, essentially based on polling, which has been our tact to date. And so we continued forward to this month. We did conduct limited, very low cost and respectful outreach focused on the COVID crisis and what persons that are using public transit or trails or even automobile trips should be considering during the COVID crisis, and then a focus on the importance of transportation for recovery. And so we did that through social media and also streaming media, which was new to our effort, through Hulu and Roku and a number of other platforms. So that has been happening and received well over the last few weeks. So, so this morning, what is before you is essentially the first reading of Ordinance 20-01. We went over that at the last meeting. It was a ordinance that was developed actually starting way back with our former executive director, Celia McAdam, myself, and our legal counsel, Deanne Gillick, with Sloan Sakai. It has been reviewed by all of the city attorneys, town attorneys, county council, and edits. A number of edits have been made. We also ran the proposed ordinance by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, or formerly the Board of Equalization, and their legal staff, and they made edits and improved the ordinance to what it is before you today. There are 24 sections of the ordinance. I will not go through each one of those sections, but again, I wanted to highlight, as we did at the last meeting, a number of key sections that are very important and in some ways unique to our ordinance. The fact that we have an independent citizens oversight is an additional item that we added to our ordinance that would require a citizens panel, which would oversee the implementation of a potential sales tax measure. 2 persons from each of the 3 cities and 1 from the county would be appointed to oversee the audit that would be done every year, and would really look at every single dollar spent to make sure that we're spending it on what we had originally intended it to be. We also have a cap on administrative costs. We feel very comfortable that we are able to cap our administrative costs to implement this program at 1% and direct a large majority of the dollars to the projects that we had intended to. And then lastly, we created what we term a district policy advisory committee. And that is, if you will, a separate committee of the board, which would consider items specific to the sales tax ordinance. So it would include the representatives of each of the 3 cities and 1 of the county boards of supervisors that would meet prior to the board consideration of specific expenditure policies and vet those before they go to the full board, because really they have the greatest impact and benefit on those jurisdictions that are in the district. Our transportation sales tax measure has a number of categories of projects. You have the actual expenditure plan in the ordinance, but just to highlight at a very high level, the programs that it funds, 54% of it goes towards major highway and roads, 10% to rail and transit, 5% to bicycle and pedestrian programs, 25% of it goes back to our cities, 3 cities, so that they can implement road improvements within those jurisdictions to mitigate traffic congestion. And then lastly, 5% is reserved for unforeseen projects that are of district-wide importance that we term the competitive projects program, that we could award to a jurisdiction, each year or every couple years for projects that we can't anticipate at this point, but are very important and key to our transportation system and traffic model for the county. Overall, we feel it is a very good ordinance. We've had the benefit of 25 other jurisdictions in the state going before us. We've taken into account all of their experience and all of their lessons learned, if you will. So staff recommends that you approve the recommended action as presented in the report. And one of the things I would like to focus in upon is item number 4, which is we are recommending that we move forward with a June polling. And that polling is a benefit whether we go in 2020, which is our primary interest at this point, are the numbers there for 2020. But if they're not, and there is a great chance that they are not, this will be key to initiating our outreach for a future ballot, be it at least at this point considered for November of 2022. It would allow us to check our messaging given what has changed with the COVID crisis and move forward with that. With that, I will end my presentation. Cherry Spriggs with FSB Core Strategies, our consultant, is here to speak a little bit more about that poll. And so I'll turn it over to her, and then we can come back and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. I actually can't see all of you because I can only actually see Paul, Sylvie, and Mike. So I just trust that all of you are there because I've got the presentation up on my screen. But good morning. So just to reiterate a little bit of what Mike had said in his comments, when we came to you all in March, when FM3 presented those numbers, had we been in a normal environment, the recommendation from our funding strategy team would have been to move forward with the 2020 election. Now, I don't think anybody has ever heard me say that that election would be a slam dunk, but certainly with those numbers, in a normal environment, you could have looked at them and it was within striking distance and there was indeed a path to victory. Now, of course, we all know it wasn't a normal environment, right? We were 1 week into COVID. We had just started to see the beginning of the shelter-in-place orders take shape, the early stages of the stock market volatility. And quite frankly, our team, myself, we just could not stand, or in that instance, we were already on Zoom, sit before you and tell you to go forward. We just couldn't do that. At that point, we decided to check in. I think all of us have been talking on a regular basis since that point. And here we are 2 months later, where we're taking up this piece today about, do we do this additional research to see where we're at? And my goodness, 2 months have gone by really quick, some days, and really slow some other days, that's for sure. And everything has changed. And now we're on in this situation where our economy is reopening, quite frankly, thanks to our local leaders and especially our Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Euler and Holmes. The actions yesterday, sending that letter to hopefully have us advance into stage 3, quite frankly, by the time this survey is in the field, 10 to 12 days from now, we could be hopefully into stage 3 by that point. So, from our perspective, this board has dedicated so much time and attention and resources to this program over the last 18 months, but really dating back as far as I know, as far as I've been involved with it since 2014. And quite frankly, whether it's a 2020 election or a 2022 election, additional data is always preferred and allows this body, quite frankly, to make a decision based on the most current information. And we know that every day it is changing. The other thing I just want to share quickly is that every member of the funding strategy team has been involved in additional research programs over the last 2 months on a variety of issues, regionally and all over the state. And in some instances, I'll be perfectly honest, the findings and data that has come back has been surprising. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the case here should the board vote today to move forward with additional research, but I think it speaks to the point that the world has drastically changed in 2 months, and now we're starting to recover. And it really is our team's belief that that we just need more data so that this board can make the most informed decision and be confident in that decision when we get to June. So with that, that's what I got.
Again, that is our staff report for this matter. Thank you, Cherry, and Madam Chair and members of the board. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have today. I think we do have some speakers that will be calling in or on the video, but again, any questions, we'd be happy to answer them about the ordinance or the process as we move forward.
Do you have any questions from the board?
I'd like to hear from the speakers first.
Kathleen, do we have anybody on at this time?
We are starting to get some. As a reminder to any folks on the call, if you would like to make a public comment on an item, you should do so by clicking the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, dialing *9 to indicate that you'd like to raise your hand, and then I'll recognize each one of you individually. So
Yes.
We're going to begin with Robert Dugan.
Go ahead.
Robert, you are unmuted. You have...
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Robert Dugan here from Roseville. And thank you all for the opportunity to provide some public comment on this. I have to concur that data is essential. The world has changed so much, and the climate and culture and public attitudes, so driven by the policies adopted in response to COVID. And as Kirk Euler pointed out in the County Board of Supervisors meeting where they were considering the plan, if so when there is a significant investment in infrastructure coming from existing mechanisms at the federal government or otherwise, Placer County being prepared to take advantage of that as a self-help county is a good thing, right? And having the plan in place so when it happens, we are positioned well to take advantage of this opportunity is a good thing. But so much has changed that the data is really critical. As was just pointed out, things are changing daily as government mandates continue to change, and we've got a lot of leadership coming out of our County Board of Supervisors for our county as we try and create our new sense of normal within reasonable bounds of safety, caution, but liberty and mobility. And I think approving some surveying to get a sense of where we stand so that you all can make the best decision at the right moment for when you move forward, if you choose to do so, is critical. So I encourage you to approve moving forward with the survey. Thank you.
The next member of the public will be Jeff Short. Jeff Short, you are unmuted.
Hello, thank you. Jeff Short from the North State Building Industry Association. Concur with many of the points that Robert Dugan just made. Data being important, getting a baseline for where we are now, or at least in a week and a half's time, as to when, you know, we very well may be at our nadir of support. And if we're not, then that speaks a lot. And if we are, then whatever decision is made with the absolute best data available. So I think that this is a very prudent strategy laid out by staff to, again, gather the best data, the most recent data available for you to make the most informed decision possible. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
The next member of the public will be Sabrina Drago.
Good morning, board and members of the Placer County. It's Sabrina Drago with WSP and a resident of Loomis. I would just like to concur with this plan and get some more data and some more information. Infrastructure has always been a great catalyst to rebound the economy in times of trial, and as we are starting to open up in California and around the country, we're already seeing that the drops in traffic are already increasing and are continuing to go up. And I think this will put Placer County with some more information in a great position to move forward out of this recession.
The next member of the public will be Doug McDougall.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Doug McDougall, Placer County citizen, and I have received several surveys that I think are connected with what you guys are talking about this morning concerning the completion of the 65 interchange and the building a connector across the Sunset, from Sunset Whitney over pretty much over to the airport, that kind of thing. And every time I've checked one of those, completed one of those surveys, which I do in good faith, they really seem stilted toward the idea that the project is going to go forward. They almost seem like propaganda. Now, the thing is, to me, I think this is outdated thinking. I think it is established fact that you cannot build yourself out of traffic congestion. What you can do is improve mass transit and get cars off the roads. It really seems like Placer County is dedicated to continuing to make the automobile the ruler of us all, and I object to that very strongly. That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Last call for any public comment. All right, Madam Chair, I'm seeing no other public comment at this time.
All right, great. We'll bring it back to the board for comments and questions. Do we have any discussion from the board?
I have no questions, but maybe I'll share my thoughts. For me, we're beginning to approach, at this moment, a bridge too far. I'm in favor of that additional polling, but we're also being asked to effectively launch the ordinance, and then based upon that polling, either allow the ordinance to fly or hit the abort button. And that's where my discomfort lies. I'm in favor of the polling to see where we truly are. I think that there's significant economic uncertainty, not just in the short term, but potentially the long term. That just makes me a little uncomfortable with the timing of approving this ordinance right now. So I'm wrestling with it.
I'm going to agree pretty strongly with you, Paul. I feel the same way. I want the data, and at this point I'm very skeptical about moving into 2020, but moving into 2022, it would be beneficial for us to have that additional information, but I don't know how I feel about moving forward with the ordinance today. Any other board members?
I agree that I believe we should do some more polling. I'm on the fence as far as going ahead with the ordinance at this point.
Is there anybody that feels strongly that we should go forward with the ordinance at this point?
Madam Chair, this is Deanne Gill with General Counsel. Just procedurally, I understand the board members' concerns, but just wanted to share the procedure. For the ordinance to be approved, it requires 2 meetings. First, an introduction and of the substantive matters, and then a second approval. The second approval must occur at a regular meeting. So if this is going to go forward for the November ballot, it must be approved at the June regular meeting in order to meet the beginning of July deadline to put it on the ballot. So it is possible to schedule a special meeting to introduce and waive the reading. There is a time requirement between the first reading and the second reading, and a requirement that the summary of the ordinance is published in the newspaper. So there will be some very tight time constraints in the event that a special meeting could be scheduled to introduce and waive the reading. So just wanted to remind the board members of the procedural requirements. And then also, if you do approve the introduction and reading of the ordinance today, the actual approval would not occur until your June regular meeting. So just wanted to remind you of the procedural requirements, and then I'm available to answer questions if some alternatives other than staff's recommendation is desired by the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
This is John Allard from Roseville. Deanne, thank you for that clarification. I think you provided us similar clarification at the last meeting. I think what we need to do is we need to do whatever we have to do at this meeting to be prepared when we get the results of the survey so we can move forward in a timely fashion. As we all know, specially called meetings are difficult, especially with a board this big, getting everybody available and together at the same time. I don't have any heartache moving forward with the ordinance if that's the step that we need to take. But we're ready when we have the results of the survey. We're ready to make a final decision. So I don't have a problem with approving the ordinance.
Trinity, if I may as well, and thank you, John, for your comments. If you recall, back in April, it was one of the reasons I encouraged us to move this to today, understanding the process as Ms. Gillick has clearly outlined for us. And therefore, that is why I felt it was best that we bring this forward today, with the final step being taken in June. So therefore, I have no reservation moving forward. I believe it sets us in the path to make that final decision after we receive the polling information. So again, I have no reservation, and I believe it is the appropriate next step for us to move forward with this initial reading and approval. Thank you.
Director Holmes here. I concur with both Mayor Allard and Councilmember Broadway.
So I had a little bit of difficulty hearing Deanne, but what I'm understanding is that if we approve this ordinance today, we can not go through with it come in our next meeting in June if the polling results come back poorly. Is that correct?
Yes, Board Member Mackey, this is Mike Luke, and yeah, action item number 2 is all you're doing is introducing the ordinance. Right. You're not actually approving the ordinance. So you don't have to rescind anything, you know, on June, because the approval is actually in June. All you're doing is introducing and waiving the first reading. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Do we have any further discussion from the board? And if not, do we have a motion?
Just for clarification.
I'll make a motion. Broadway, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Excuse me, just on the motion, it's important that item number 2 is read into the record, to actually introduce the ordinance by title only, which is introduce ordinance number 20-01, Placer County Local Transportation Authority Transportation Improvement Plan and Retail Transactions and Use Tax Ordinance, South Placer County District, and waive the oral reading of the full ordinance. So if Commissioner Broadway doesn't mind, if I'd like to make his motion or amend his motion or clarify his motion includes that oral reading. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Well, yeah, I will absolutely accept that. Thank you, Ms. Gillen.
And I will again second that. This is Allard.
All right, Sylvie?
Okay. Allard,
Sorry. Yes.
okay. Baker,
Aye.
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Joyner,
A very cautious yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Euler.
Aye.
Passes.
All right, moving on to
Madam Chair, before you move on, I just wanted to highlight the next steps will be that we will actually have a subcommittee of the board. Our polling subcommittee will meet during the first week of June to review the content of the poll, and then we will poll during the week of June 8th. The subcommittee will then meet just before the board meeting to review the results of the polling, and then the poll will be presented to the board at its regular meeting in June. So we have a very slow and methodical approach, and we are utilizing the subcommittee at every step of the way to make sure that the poll is right and that they've reviewed the results before it comes to the board.
Thank you, Mike. All right, moving into item I, final fiscal year 2020-2021 overall work program and budget.
Morning, members of the board. Luke McNeil-Caird, Deputy Executive Director of PCTPA. Including your packet is the final work program and budget for next fiscal year. I'll show it here on screen. This is for 2020-21. The final is very similar to the draft that was presented to the board in February with a focus on pre-construction project implementation and core agency activities. The final document incorporates comments from Caltrans, and they did request additional information on the mobility action plan, which is work element 46, and you'll see those additional details added in that work element. So as you just talked about, the largest change between the draft and final is the potential budget impacts due to the COVID-19 shelter at home that began in March. And so as a result, it is anticipated that sales tax revenue will be lower in 2020-21 compared to this year, resulting in lower local transportation funds that PCTPA receives directly, as well as funding received by our local agencies. So we've taken a proactive approach here, and we looked into what San Diego and also SACOG was doing for next year, and we've assumed, based on that research, a 20% reduction in next year's local transportation funds from sales tax. And as a result, we have also reduced outreach and consultant expenditures in both work element 14, that's communications and outreach, and work element 61, the regional transportation funding program. So while revenues are going down, we've also reduced our expenditures. And with that, the budget does balance, and we're able to still maintain our 7 full-time equivalent staff and also maintain our contingency fund of $730,000, which is about 14% of the budget. We are going to continue to monitor revenues during the upcoming fiscal year, and we will bring a revised budget back to the board as needed. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions from the board?
I have none.
All right, at this time, do we need a motion to approve it?
I move the item.
Allard, second.
Sylvie?
Allard,
Yes.
Baker. Baker,
Aye.
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Euler.
Aye.
All right. That brings us then to item J. This is a public hearing request to approve a special condition exception for Shale Ridge Community Recovery Resource Facility in Auburn, Airport Compatibility Zone B1, Placer County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. For this item, board members Jim Holmes and board member Kirk Euler will not be participating in item J and will be exiting the Zoom call at this time. Their alternate member, Bonnie Gore, will be sitting in on this item only. Jim and Kirk, would you like to say something before you exit the Zoom call before the public hearing?
As much as I'd love to sit in on this, it would be a lot of fun, but sadly, I must recuse myself. So thank you, Chair Barris, for your leadership.
Thank you, Jim. And I would just like to reemphasize Deanne's comment earlier. Unfortunately, we are required to have a reason for you recusing.
Oh, you do? Well, I have received some campaign contributions from Mr. Harmon within the last year.
Yeah, just for clarification, there's the Levine Act applies to this board, which covers campaign contributions. And in the event that a board member has received a contribution of $250 over the last 12 months, they cannot participate and they must disclose it. So I believe that applies to board member Holmes as well as board member Euler.
Thank you.
Yeah, if it were the 250,000 threshold, no, it wouldn't have applied. But yeah, the $250, when that one does. So yeah, I'm out. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, folks.
Thank you.
Have fun.
All right, and I think at this point we would probably give it a couple minutes for Bonnie to join.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. I guess we can go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Okay, Madam Chair, this is David Melko. I have this item. And as you had mentioned, today we have a request from an applicant to approve a special conditions exception regarding the Shale Ridge Community Recovery Resources Facility. Next slide. So this slide's probably more for the benefit of the viewing public, but the role of the Airport Land Use Commission role is basically to adopt and maintain airport land use compatibility plans. We have 3 airports in this county, Auburn, Blue Canyon, and Lincoln, and so we have compatibility plans for each of those airports. The role of the commission also is to review changes to plans, zoning, building ordinances, and various local regulations that may affect project development within an airport influence area. Next slide. I think it's important today to remind the commission of 3 important points. The ALUC is not responsible for approving or denying the project. Project approval is the responsibility of Placer County. The ALUCP action today is to determine whether the applicant's request to the commission to approve a special conditions exception is consistent with the airport land use compatibility plan. Next slide. So for those members who have not had a chance to do a field or a site visit, slide here shows some existing conditions. So the project's located at 12125 Shale Ridge Road. The project is called Community Recovery Resources. It's a residential care facility. Its purpose is to provide for substance abuse and rehab services, provides inpatient 24-hour services. Current building is about 5,700 square feet. And under the county planning director's permit, it has a maximum occupancy permitted up to 30 people. Next slide. For the commission, just a reminder, the commission conducted a consistency review of Auburn's airport layout plan, and we completed that back in August 2009. This particular airport layout plan will serve as the basis to update the airport land use compatibility plan for Auburn. We will begin that work in July. It may be kind of hard to see on the slide here, but the airport layout plan for Auburn is proposing a runway extension to the west of approximately 390 feet. With that, you basically have runway protection zones and runway safety areas that get expanded by 200 feet each. So the airport basically, airport area advances to the west by a minimum of 600 feet. Next slide. The proposed project here, Western Care, the applicant is Western Care Construction. Their proposal is to expand the existing residential care facility. So the expansion would take it from the 5,700 square feet existing up to 11,000, slightly less than 400 square feet. And they were requesting a total maximum occupancy of 85 people. 85 people will include both clients and employees. So that's an increase from the 30 people that they're currently permitted to do under the county's planning director permit. Next slide. I thought this slide would be kind of important here because this is kind of an unusual request. We haven't had many special conditions requests during my tenure at the Airport Land Use Commission. And so it's new for me and it's new for the commission. So I thought it'd be good to indicate, why is this project before us today? So the project was submitted to Placer County for pre-development review. And the current project is an existing non-conforming use, both under the zoning code at Placer County as well as under the airport land use compatibility plan. And the proposal is to expand the non-conforming use. At the pre-development review, the project was flagged for airport compatibility issues. And I apologize, there's a train coming by. The project was flagged because it was noted that the project was incompatible under the airport land use compatibility plan regarding several policies within the plan, and also that any expansion under with an incompatible use can only occur with the special conditions exception. So in that regard, and only the Airport Land Use Commission can approve a special conditions exception. So that's why we have this request today from the applicant before the commission. And the processing of the county's development application is currently on hold until this airport land use compatibility plan consistency issue is resolved. Once it's resolved, depending on how it's resolved, it goes back into the county planning process. Next slide. Okay, so what is the applicant requesting? So they're requesting a special condition exception in what specifically is called the compatibility zone B1 of the Auburn plan. And they're requesting to allow an expansion of an existing non-conforming non-residential inpatient medical use, and to also allow expansion of what is also deemed a risk-sensitive land use having vulnerable occupants, and to exceed the maximum single acre intensity requirements. Under the plan, the maximum single acre intensity is 80 people, and the applicant is requesting 85. Next slide. So this map, it shows the Auburn Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. It shows the location of the project. It's in compatibility zone B1. You've previously seen the map of the airport layout plan and the fact that the runway will be advancing a minimum of 600 feet to the west. And so this is an area of where noise and safety issues, overflight and airspace protection issues are paramount interest under the compatibility plan. Okay, next slide. So here we have what's called a criteria table. It's the compatibility table that shows the various criteria. This particular project we're labeling an inpatient medical use. And it could also be listed under residential, under congregate care. We don't show it on this particular table here, but it could also be labeled short-term or long-term lodging, because some patients will stay less than 30 days. Some patients will stay up to 90 days. So it could qualify under short-term or long-term lodging. Regardless of the land use classification, and here I only show two, all of those land use classifications are deemed incompatible. Boxed out on the table, the red areas, and shows that it's an incompatible use. Next slide. So under the airport land use compatibility plan, when we conduct a consistency review, we look at 4 factors. And I previously mentioned, we look at noise, safety, airspace protection, and overflight. And so for noise, the project is conditionally compatible. The requirement basically is to adhere to the noise provisions within the airport land use compatibility plan, and the applicant has indicated as part of their write-up that they would be able to do so. I'm going to skip safety for a moment. Airspace protection. Airspace protection really kind of deals with height. And in this particular zone, anything over 35 feet requires an FAA airspace review. The applicant's building plans, which were included in the as an attachment to the staff report, show that the height of the building will be 19 feet. So it's compatible there. Although under current county zoning, it could go up to 40 feet. So that's why it's labeled conditionally compatible. Overflight condition. Within this particular zone, there's a requirement that development dedicate a navigation easement to the airport operator. In this case, it would be the city of Auburn. So coming back to safety, the proposal is inconsistent with the safety requirements for zone B1. One, it's an existing non-conforming non-residential risk-sensitive use. You're not allowed to expand non-conforming uses. You can remodel uses. In this particular provision, or this particular land use, because it's governed by certain state laws, the building can be altered to meet the requirements of those state laws, but nevertheless, expansion is not allowed for the particular use. It exceeds the maximum single acre intensity of 80 people. And as the previous table, compatibility criteria shows that it's an incompatible land use. Next slide. So the Airport Land Use Commission has 3 choices. They could find this consistent with the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. They could say it's consistent subject to conditions. As staff to the commission, we're recommending that it's inconsistent to the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan based on specific conflicts. And we're recommending that you deny the applicant's special condition request and determine that the proposed expansion is inconsistent after considering the applicant's request. Next slide. Given that the board may wish to pursue an alternate path, staff has prepared an alternate recommendation. And that recommendation would be that you would find that the normally incompatible, non-conforming, risk-sensitive use is acceptable, subject to the following conditions. You would limit the intensity to the maximum of 80 people per acre. Okay, so as a reminder, they're requesting 85. They're currently permitted under county zoning at 30. So under the plan, 80 is the maximum. You would limit the structure height to not exceed 35 feet or any expansion of the building. So maximum aircraft interior noise levels has to meet 45 decibels, and that won't be exceeded. The applicant has actually indicated that that should not be a problem for the building design measures, and that a navigation easement is dedicated to the city of Auburn. And we're also recommending that there be an inclusion of an emergency evacuation plan. We did this same provision for a child care center for those people, members of the commission that were around during the O'Brien Child Care Development Center review before the board. And it's a wise thing to have in place given the proximity to the airport and the probability of aircraft-related crashes. And lastly, because you're making the special condition exception, we would need to update policy 4.2.3 within the Auburn compatibility plan, because we would need to now reference this particular locale as subject to a special conditions exception. And we would need to reflect that on the map so that future generations of airport land use compatibility planners that succeed me will be able to recognize that this particular location is subject to certain provisions, special provisions. Next slide. So next steps, Madam Chair, would be to conduct a public hearing and make a consistency determination. However, before you go to the public hearing, I would like to note several things. We've received some comments and some inquiries from the public, received comments from PG&E and NID regarding protecting easements of the project, and I forwarded those on to Placer County for their processing once the application goes back to the county. And there have been several property owner inquiries about what the role of the Airport Land Use Commission is. What are you, who are you, how do you relate to Placer County, and just inquiries in general about the project. Nobody within those inquiries expressed any pros or cons with respect to the project. And we received lastly a letter yesterday from Caltrans Division of Aeronautics, and they support the staff recommendation and they oppose the alternate recommendation. And in their opposition to the alternate recommendation, they said that implementation of the special conditions exception would not would negate sound airport land use planning. And prior to opening the public hearing, Madam Chair, we do have the applicant, and they've expressed the desire to speak on behalf of their project on their special conditions request. And I believe they have 3 representatives that will each like to speak.
David, you have a letter from the city of Auburn as well, don't you?
Yes, that Director Joyner, you're correct, and that's included in your board attachment. That came very early in the process.
We also have a representative from the city of Auburn besides me. We have a staff member that would want to speak as well.
Okay.
All right, so in this case, would we hear from the applicant and then those opposed? And then the applicant again in order to comment back? Is that our procedure?
That would be the way that I would recommend it go forward. And then after that, open it up to the public for any additional comments.
All right, let's hear from the applicant.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Tyler Reyes. I'm accompanied by ALUCP, Mark Carmen, and Patrick Dollermeyer. Our company.
We're having some audio issues.
Hard to hear.
Is this better?
Much better.
Yeah, all right. Well, to start off, our company and our affiliates have had a long history with the project location off Shale Ridge Lane and Highway 49 in North Auburn. Since the 1960s, we've constructed multiple residential housing, apartment, duplexes, office building, and several different skilled nursing facilities as well, just to help out the people of Auburn and the community. The current project location is called Granite Wellness Center, formerly known as CORR, C-O-R-R. Since 2015, they've been a nonprofit organization focusing on the rehab of drug, alcohol abuse, multiple substances. They offer mental illness, help classes, detoxification, transitional housing, and also help out the parents of those in need, hopefully to intervene back into the community, the people in help. So the facility is currently at full occupancy with 28 beds for women and men with the staff 24 hours a day. There is a waiting list to get into this program, which is why we're seeking to expand the building to have more beds, more classrooms, just to help out more people. We understand that our location lies within the B1 zoning of the ALUC policy, and which is why we're seeking a special conditions variance for our project. You know, we're adhering to all of the guidelines set forth by the ALUC regarding safety, sound attenuation, building height. We're going to make sure that overflight zones are free and clear of any structures, buildings, and we're sticking to the 80-person single acre intensity capacity as well, rather than the 85. So we're doing everything we can to stay within the guidelines. And also, we also have our project architect, David Clayton, on. David, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And for the board, thank you for your time to listen to us. So as the architect on the project, I can tell you that we're taking this very seriously in terms of the safety of the occupants, both from a fire safety, a fire, and also an acoustical aspect. We're proposing to build the addition and what's under the building code as a type 2B construction, which means all the construction would be non-combustible. So what we're proposing is a structural concrete insulated panel system, which inherently has a 2-hour fire rating. It also has a stainless steel welded wire reinforcement mesh in the concrete that acts to create almost like a net, you know, so it will actually catch impact and flex and bounce off things. Obviously, you can't fully stop an airplane from crashing into a building, and God forbid that happen. But it's what we believe will help us keep the building as safe as possible. In addition to this, we're also dramatically increasing the number of exits. The California building code only requires for this size of building 2 or 3 exits. We're actually proposing to have 19 exits. 11 of those would be door exits, and 8 of those would be residential compliant egress windows out of the sleeping rooms. In addition, we're also proposing to use a fully automatic sprinkler system and fire alarm system, and with that, we would also instruct the operator of the facility to conduct regular fire drills to make sure that the staff and the occupants are aware of the fire exiting plan. In addition to that, we've also proposed a new fire lane to make it much easier for the fire trucks to access the building and to provide coverage for the building. And then we also have outlined an area where you could have a mobile triage area on a grassy field outside, so that in the event of an emergency, once people are evacuated from the building, you can have a place to check to make sure that people are safe, that they're well, as you have ambulances coming to pick people up in the event of an aircraft emergency. The acoustics were those same walls and roof panels. Those have an SDC of 60. That effectively means that 60 decibels of sound will be removed across the barrier, and the windows would be about an SDC 50 to SDC 55, depending on the final installation. And we do propose to sound test those once we're done with the construction to make sure that we actually attained our target sound transmission class ratings. So hopefully, a lot of these extra added efforts that we're going through to try to make sure that the occupants are safe and well cared for will help mitigate some of the factors of concern. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So overall, we're doing this for the residents of Auburn and Placer County. Granite Wellness Center has a long history of success with their rehab center and their programs. And added rooms, this will just increase their capacity to help more. And that's why we're seeking the special conditions variance for this building. So thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, can we hear from the City of Auburn?
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is Tanya Ward, Senior Planner for the City of Auburn. The City of Auburn concurs with staff's analysis and recommendation to deny the special conditions exception request. As previously mentioned, the city's comment letter is attached to your packet, and I'd like to take a brief moment to highlight some of the main points raised. First and most importantly, the proposal is inconsistent with the basic compatibility criteria of general land use categories for the zone in which it's located. This is the B1 zone. As pointed out in your materials, it's this B1 zone that's adjacent to and beyond the ends of the city's runway protection zone, known as Zone A. This is of significance to the city because Zone A contains the airport's main infrastructure and the overall viability of airport functions and the potential expansion of these facilities. For example, this request does not consider the changes that will occur as a result of the city's updated airport layout plan, which will bring the airport operation approximately 600 feet closer to the project site. Absent of the consideration, or absent of this consideration, the project remains inconsistent with the ALUCP safety provisions as it relates to the type of use. The at-risk sensitive land use is incompatible with Zone B, and it exceeds the intensity criteria for the number of people per acre. And lastly, the city finds concern with the potential precedents created by approving a new development found incompatible within the B1 zone and the unintended consequences for the currently adopted ALUCP and future updates. That concludes my comments. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Kathleen, do we have anybody else who would like to comment on this?
Madam Chair, I am seeing no other public comment at this time.
Thank you. I would just like
Madam Chair, a member of the public has just raised their hand.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Matt, you are able to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Mac McElroy. I am a Placer County resident. I am a pilot that bases an aircraft at the Auburn Airport, and I'm also the chair of the Airport Advisory Committee, part of the Auburn Aviation Association. And we have our concerns about this project as well. We agree with the city. We agree with Caltrans Aeronautical Division, and we certainly agree with staff that this project is not compatible with the land use, especially given the consideration that the future expansion will bring our runway much, much closer to not only this project but to the care facility that already exists adjacent to this property. You know, we've had our fair share of accidents recently, and I think it highlights the dangerous hobby that we have. We lost our mayor to an accident recently, and if the two pilots in the last two accidents hadn't had the courage to turn their planes away from developed property around the airport, things could have ended a lot worse than they did. Those decisions cost them their lives, and we just do not see how this expansion is going to make things better. It's not. I applaud the nonprofit and the work that they do for the community. it's important and it needs to continue and it needs to grow. We just don't believe that this is the place for that to happen. An aircraft that may impact a building, whether they use a wired web system or not, is going to destroy it. And as the airport grows and the runway is possibly expanded, heavier and heavier aircraft are going to be coming in there. Today we have jets, we have the CHP helicopters, we have the sheriff's helicopters, we have the CHP heavy fixed wing aircraft that operate out of there. We have World War II aircraft that operate out of there that are very heavy, and a concrete building with a wired mesh interior just is not going to protect anybody inside those buildings. So the Auburn Aviation Association, along with the Airport Advisory Committee, asks that the board consider this not an expansion, but a brand new facility. And would you approve a new facility under these conditions? And I think the answer is no. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question of Mac? Would that be allowable?
I'm fine with it.
I have no opposition.
Okay. So Mac, I got my ticket at 17, and while I'm not currently a pilot, I'm very familiar with aviation safety. I have not personally taken off from Auburn Airport, so maybe you could talk to us about altitude achieved by the time you pass over this facility. Are you at pattern height by the time you pass over this existing facility?
Absolutely not. And that's why it's B1. And as the airport runway length is expanded, the potential for even lower altitudes increases. So the pattern altitude for Auburn is 2,500 feet. You barely get up to 200, maybe 300 if you're lucky by the time you pass over this property. And if you look at this property from a satellite view, it is on the center line for both the approach to runway 07 and the departure from runway 25. Pilots are encouraged when departing 25, and so you know, 25 is the prevailing wind runway. The majority of departures and arrivals occur on 25 as opposed to 07. It's very, I can't say rare, but the winds blow more prominently from the west as opposed to the east. So more aircraft are taking off runway 25, which is the most dangerous part of flight, is the departure. And you have low altitudes, you have very, very little time to make a decision, and you have very, very little glide, depending on the type of aircraft that you're in, if you lose an engine. And in the case of our last two fatalities, we have had both of those were engine losses. So both of those planes had to glide to wherever they impacted. So you're at a very low altitude and you have very little time. And making a turn reduces the lift of an aircraft. Everything changes when you start to make a turn. Gliding straight ahead, you get the best performance. But when you start to make a turn, you're going to sink at a dramatic rate. And so those pilots that made the choice to turn knew that they were going to descend at a much greater rate than had they just gone straight forward.
So what would you say is the average glide ratio of an aircraft taking off at Auburn Airport, general aviation? 12 to 1?
It really, oh no, not 12 to 1. No. I'd say in a Cessna high wing aircraft, a Cessna 172 or a 182, for every 1,000 feet of altitude that you have on a standard day, you might get 1 mile of glide. So 1,000 feet, think about what happens at 200 or 300 feet when you don't even have full speeds. You're still gaining speed as you're climbing. Now that glide ratio that I just gave you was for an aircraft in flight, in cruise. Let's say a 172, 182, let's say a 182 is doing 130 knots. When they're taking off, they're barely at 80 or 90 knots. So that glide ratio is significantly decreased during takeoff because the momentum and the forward speed is so low. So even less opportunity to make a decision. And your decision has to be instantaneous. You cannot, you wait 2 or 3 seconds, and that 2 or 3 seconds is gonna make a huge difference.
Thank you, Mac.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public, Kathleen?
We do. Randy Lays, you should be able to talk.
Hi, this is Randy. How can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Randy Lays. I'm president of the AAA, which Mr. McElroy made an excellent representation for our organization, and I yield my time to him and appreciate and thanks for the opportunity for allowing us to share. We probably have a few others of our group on board, and they may want to make comment, and I yield time to them. But I just want to make one correction possibly about the altitude. Mac mentioned we're at 2,500 on traffic pattern, which actually is above sea level altitude. Technically above ground, that's 1,000 feet above the ground. So that's the only comment I would add to that. Is that all right, Mac? Anyways, thanks for the time, and I'll yield time to somebody else.
Thank you, Randy, for that clarification and your comments.
Madam Chair, we have another member of the public. Mike Garabedian.
All right. You there, Mike?
I'm trying to unmute him.
Oh, okay.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, a little bit of feedback, but we can hear you.
I don't know why the feedback is there.
If you are on your phone and on the computer, that can cause feedback. So we ask that you mute one of those.
You may also need to turn the volume down on your computer.
Madam Chair, it looks like we lost him. I'm trying to get him back.
In the meantime, do we have anyone else?
No, he's the final member of the public.
Okay.
Well, let's give it. Madam Chair, it looks like he's left the meeting. He might be trying to rejoin. Maybe we can move on with some board discussion, and then if he rejoins, I will alert you.
All right, that sounds like a great plan to me. All right, do we have any comments or questions from the board at this time? Especially anything specifically we'd like to ask of the applicant. I see Cheryl.
Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. I just have some comments. Of course, I represent the city of Auburn on the city council, and I won't belabor any of the comments already made, except to say that I agree with staff's recommendation and with our staff's recommendation. This does not take away the fact that Granite Wellness Center is a wonderful organization, does a lot for our community. It's very difficult to be put in this position, as unfortunately, but I have to think of the greater good of all. And it couldn't come at a worse time after just losing our mayor in a plane crash from this very airport. So I appreciate all the efforts made by Mr. Harmon's corporation in making the building safe and easy to exit and all those things. But I too do not want to set a precedent. And we have approval to increase our runway. And I don't want anything to stop that. I think that's what we need for safety at our airport. And that said, like I said, I agree with everything Max said and Randy said, and I would appeal to my board members to deny this project. Thank you.
So I think I want to circle back around to what David said in the beginning. We neither approve nor deny this project. We're simply making a compatibility determination.
May I ask a
Sorry,
few?
I misspoke.
May I ask a few questions?
Yes, please.
So I have a couple things I want to understand a little bit better, because I certainly see that the 4 areas, and the one area of safety is the biggest concern. So I was looking at the map of the location, and there's the convalescent home that's just to the east of this location, if I'm reading that correctly, right?
Correct.
So is there an intent? I read that there's a plan to expand the airport on either end of the runway. But with that convalescent home there, which is even closer than this building, is that likely to happen? I was hoping Mac was on the phone. I wanted to ask that question because I know there's a desire to have more traffic and increase the size of the airport or the length of the runways. But with that convalescent hospital there, I would think that would make it even more difficult to expand the runway. Does anybody?
I could respond to that. So the footprint of the runway expansion, both on the west and the east, will occur within the airport property. So there's no acquisition needed under the updated airport layout plan. So it's all within airport property, including the runway protection zone. The existing convalescent home is also considered a non-conforming use under the airport land use compatibility plan. I can't speak to county zoning on that because I haven't researched that, but under the compatibility plan, if it was proposed today, it would not be an allowable
Right.
use.
I think I understand that. It's just that
Okay.
if the runway even longer towards that convalescent home, that makes me wonder if that would ever really happen because it is so much closer than even this proposed project.
Well, and I can't speak for the city of Auburn, but more than likely that the runway will have to, once it's proposed, will have to undergo a project environmental review. And as part of that project environmental review, you'll have all sorts of issues and concerns that will need to be addressed by the city of Auburn. And perhaps the care home there, will be a commenter, on that future environmental document. So.
Okay, and then just a couple of other questions. I was looking at the vulnerable population, and it sounds like it's vulnerable because you've got people there overnight versus during the day, from what I can tell. Because originally I thought it was sort of people's mobility, but these are people that are staying there, and it's not that they're vulnerable and can't get up and move. It's just they're spending the night there. Was that correct?
That's partially correct. The policy in the airport land use compatibility plan lists a variety of land uses that are considered vulnerable with vulnerable populations. So schools, hospitals, any sort of medical facility that has overnight stay and inpatient use, emergency shelters, religious institutions, anywhere where there's large groups of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be overnight. It can also be large groups of people.
So large groups of people, which would be why, because I was looking at what else could be built there based on the yellow, green, and red charts. It looks like townhomes, mobile homes, B&B, those types, like a single family residential, it would be allowed in that zone based on the chart. But then this residential usage, because it's got more people, would not be allowed, it sounds like.
Correct, yeah. A low density, low intensity use would be permitted. So what's prominent around, the airport are industrial manufacturing, warehouse development, research development types of facilities where there is low intensity employee use, and then single family because it's low density.
Okay, so it's the density is the issue. And even though they could move up to 80 people per acre, which they'd be willing to do, the concern is still the density.
I missed that last part.
The concern is still the density.
Well, intensity is an important consideration, but also just because under the plan it listed as a type of use, it's a risk-sensitive use because you have people that are in a facility that are requiring care, and so and then also that many of them stay overnight. That also is another factor.
Yeah, and I hear that, but that doesn't change somebody being able to get up and get out if need be. Just like in a home, single family home, or somebody who could open up the sliding glass door and walk out if there was an issue. So I'm just, I look at this and I certainly hear the concern about safety. And I always look at, people utilize the land that they have for a project, which especially a project that could benefit the community. So I'm just trying to understand a couple of things. So I appreciate the answers.
May I speak? We don't quite know how to raise our hands on Zoom. I apologize, but we were wondering if we could way back in.
Yeah, and just to check really quick, Kathleen, were we able to get Michael Garabedian back on the phone?
We were not. I will also say that Director Baker has indicated that he would like to make a comment. So perhaps we could have Director Baker make his comment question and then the applicants respond in total to the board's comments.
Please.
Having taken off from runway 25 on several occasions, your aircraft is at its most vulnerable state there. And as a training pilot, I look at it and go, having a nursing home there, probably not a good idea. Having a care facility there, not a good idea. It's just not a great place. So I do find that this is going to be inconsistent, in my opinion, with the airport land use. If we want to protect the airport, we want the airport to expand and grow, and for commerce to come in because of that, we are going to have to protect that airspace, and I think it sets a precedent. So I am definitely not inclined to move forward with that.
All right, do we have any other comments from the board whatsoever before we hear back from the applicant? No? All right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Tyler, I was just gonna hop in and just ask a couple quick questions. So one thing about the airport land use compatibility table, I do want to make it clear that this particular facility doesn't actually fit within any of these categories. The designations that have been identified are basically just the closest to what the actual use is. The population that will be cared for in this facility, they're actually able-bodied people who are they're already clean from drugs. That this is not a rehab clinic per se. It's a recovery facility for after they've gone through detox or something like that. So these people are capable of exiting safely on their own without assistance, unlike a congregate care center such as a retirement home or a convalescent home, where the residents would actually require assistance to be provided exiting. And this is based on definitions as defined by OSHPD, not those congregate care facilities are licensed under OSHPD because they need assistance. This is not licensed under OSHPD because the people do not need assistance for exiting. So I just wanted to clarify that. The second thing is I did want to ask Mr. Baker, is a pilot and does training. I'm just curious what his thoughts are on the topography, because this particular facility is actually probably 30, 40 feet below the plateau that the airport's on, with a pretty steep bluff before it goes up to the convalescent home. I'm just curious, with this particular facility being so close to that bluff next to the plateau, what is the aircraft likelihood in terms of being able to actually accidentally strike this facility? Just curious.
Really, that's all going to depend on the type of aircraft. If it's like a Piper 140, 140 horse, 4-place, probably not very likely. He's going to be making a left-hand turn to follow the pattern. If it's a high-performance aircraft, a 182, jet aircraft, anything turbine, they have enough power to do a straight-out departure. So it really all depends on the aircraft. But as this airport expands, you're continuously running into the same issue. And so as heavier and heavier aircraft come in, a straight-out departure is more likely than a pattern departure.
I'd like to weigh in just a little bit that, I feel like we've kind of missed is this expansion. Not only is it an expansion of a current building, so it's not really adding any, it's not adding much of a target to that surrounding area, but we really have built into the design and the plan to increase the safety of the local areas in such a case of a crash. Trying to add the access, the throughway with the property that we have, we want to make the accessibility from, Dry Creek better to this location. We want to add fire hydrants that will, be utilized in any such emergency. And we're adding staging areas in case there was a crash and, like the one that was very recent, having those safer areas. Shell Ridge is a very one-in access road. We've tried to allow access to our properties for emergency vehicles. We did at that crash, but that is a big consideration of this project. And if we're not allowed to do any sort of renovations or expansions or develop that properties around us, it's going to actually impede the ability for emergency vehicles to access that area in case something happens. And if that expansion of the airport is going to happen, I think that entire area needs to have better egress and, and more traffic or more ability to, get emergency vehicles in there. So I want that to be put out there that, we're not trying to add, we're trying to improve the safety of that entire area, because we are a major landowner in that entire area. And, we've built that into and made sure that we've worked with all of the fire and safety, emergency services, because the convalescent hospital was an aspect that we built, and that's always been our main, concern out there is the safety and evacuation of all of our, current residents, the residential residents and the patients that are at any of the facilities. So I just wanted to kind of weigh in on that, that has been taken into consideration in this entire design. And if there was aspects that would help in that, we are more than willing to still add to that, safety plan, so that, you know, the entire area can benefit.
Thank you.
Through the chair, may I ask a question or two of the applicant?
Yes, but I'm going to go ahead and say that this is going to be the last questions of the applicant, and we'll take final comments.
Okay. So I'm curious. This is already a non-conforming use. We're not allowed to expand a non-conforming use, and so we're being asked to make a finding of special conditions exception. And I assume that I shouldn't make any assumptions. What are those special conditions that you think qualify this for an exception? Is it the mitigation efforts that you're taking in the event of an incident? So far, I've heard nothing that is preventative of an incident, but rather reactionary and mitigating should an incident occur. So I'd be curious what those special conditions are that you want us to find.
Well, the special conditions, noise, safety, obviously, navigation easement. We're making sure that because it is a non-conforming use, we're going to try and make it conforming by adhering to all the safety issues, single story. We're going to make sure nothing inhibits the flight path of a pilot overhead. We're not going to install any tall structures. If anything, we're going to stabilize the existing building and make it safer. And we're going to be adding a lot more infrastructure outside with the drive aisles, everything. So anytime a plane flies over, the building, if anything, will be safer than it is now with our expansion. And that's why we're seeking that special conditions, because we're following all the guidelines, and you know, we're not gonna inhibit any flight path at all. So.
All right, thank you for that. David, quick question. Regardless of our finding here today, the county will be approving the actual project, correct?
Well, okay. So this is probably a good point to explain what happens here. So, you know, there's two possible scenarios. If the ALUC goes with the staff recommendation, so that will be communicated to the county and to the applicant that we have basically denied the special condition exception request. And so the applicant then can go back and resurrect his application with the county. However, there will be substantial constraints on what he will be able to do because if you're working within the confines of the airport land use compatibility plan, it will be difficult to move forward within the county process. So in that regard,
The county could do that, but they personally would be taking on the liability should anything happen, correct?
I would defer to our attorney to answer the liability question, but more than likely what will occur here is if the board upholds the staff recommendation, I would suspect that the applicant will appeal. There is an appeal process here, and they will appeal it to the county, and the county board of supervisors will need to render a decision within 45 days of receipt of that appeal. And the county then will have to take a supermajority vote in overriding the Airport Land Use Commission in that regard. Assuming that the county takes all those steps, takes that action, then the applicant will be able to then move forward with the processing of their application. And of course, if the alternate recommendation is approved by the Airport Land Use Commission today, that will also be communicated to the applicant and to the county. The alternate recommendation includes a number of conditions that we're recommending as staff, including the conditions included, or the mitigating measures included in the applicant's write-up. And those would then hopefully be included by the county staff as part of the project approval process as conditions on the project. So those are.
Deanna, did you have some comments?
Yeah, ma'am, just for clarification, Mr. Malco stated the process correctly. In the event that the Airport Land Use Commission denies the request and finds that it's not compatible, the applicant can appeal to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors can consider an overruling the decision of the Airport Land Use Commission. It would require a 2/3 vote of the Board of Supervisors pursuant to Public Utilities Code 21676. And there is a provision you asked about immunity, Board Member Joyner. In the event that the Board of Supervisors overrules the decision of the Airport Land Use Commission, at that point, the airport obtains immunity in the event something happens associated with that use. So there is a provision in the state code that provides an immunity to the airport in the event the local land use entity overrules the Airport Land Use Commission. So just some clarification, and if there's anything else on the vote.
Thank you, Dan. All right. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move it to the board for final discussion and action.
Well, I think it's pretty clear from my perspective, at least, that this is a non-conforming use. We're not allowed to expand upon a non-conforming use. And while there are certainly a great many mitigation efforts taking place, I don't personally find that they rise to the level of creating a special conditions exception. So I would make a motion to deny the request and support staff's recommendation.
Second, Mackie.
Thank you, Paul. I just want to say I agree 100% with Paul on this, and it has nothing to do with the great work that your organization is doing. We definitely support that and appreciate the safety measures that you guys have taken. Unfortunately, though, it does not meet the standard for a special exception here, and I feel like it's pretty cut and dry, unfortunately. But I am glad to hear that there are other options and other avenues that could be sought. So, Solby, if you'd like to call the roll, we have a motion and a second.
Allard,
Yes.
Baker,
Aye.
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Gore,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Mackey.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item K, Executive Director's Report.
I will make this very brief considering the late hour of our meeting. I just wanted to point out a couple of things with the COVID crisis. We are essentially, we have resumed operations at the office of PCTPA. We are acting as an office in accordance with CDC and state guidelines, but our staff for the most part is back working in the office. We are allowing telecommuting to continue on an as-needed basis with some of our employees, but for the most part we are back. We are not yet open to the public, and we are doing all meetings remotely as we are today with the board meeting. All of our other meetings are remote. So we are back. The screen that Kathleen is sharing with you is a video taken this past Friday with the opening of the Galleria. You can see that traffic on 65 is back, and so we are experiencing significant traffic in the weekday afternoons between Blue Oaks Boulevard and Galleria Boulevard. So this is a good sign that our economy is making a comeback, and we are going to continue to monitor the situation as it applies to not only the sales tax measure but other items as well. Lastly, I wanted to mention that we are continuing our efforts at the federal stimulus level. We are monitoring with our federal advocate the stimulus process. It has not yet started, but we are getting our county ready by requesting projects from every one of the jurisdictions, which have been now submitted. We have over $1 billion worth of shovel-ready projects, which is very impressive compared to the Great Recession, where we had just a few projects that were ready to go. So if there is to be a stimulus bill, we do have a significant need and a significant ability to respond with those projects. With that, unless the board has any, there was one other thing I wanted to highlight kind of related to the OWP, and that is our contingency fund. I just wanted to make one note that it has been the history of the agency to use our contingency fund as a version of operating capital. We try not to eat into that very much, but as you know, we work to cash flow some very significant grant projects and other projects through our agency, and we have to get reimbursed for those projects. And so on a normal basis, we do use only when needed the contingency to cash flow. And as we get to things like the end of the fiscal year, that happens more prevalently, but just wanted to highlight that. So with that, unless the board has any questions, we will see you all back here in June. Likely we will be doing the Zoom meeting again. The reason we're doing that and not returning back to live status is because we are on a delay basis. We don't have live like some of our city councils and board of supervisors, and that would represent a significant cost at a time where we're trying to conserve revenue. So it's easiest for us, even though we want to resume to live status, to maintain this Zoom for at least the next few meetings.
All right, thank you, Mike. Do we have any board direction to staff at this time?
No.
All right, seeing none, just mentioning item M, we do have some informational items as part of the agenda packet. If we do have any public comment on those at this time, Kathleen, did we have any? I assume not.
None, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, well, that being the case, then we are good to adjourn.
So we do need to reconvene as the South Placer. So maybe I suggest, I don't know if the chair wants to go straight into that or take a 5-minute recess and then have everyone reconnect for that meeting.
If we take a 5-minute recess, I think that'd be most appropriate. So Director Allard could take over as chair.
And just to note that there's a separate link for that Zoom meeting. It's not the same meeting. So you do have to all log out and then log into the Sparta meeting.
So I suggest maybe 10:55, that meeting should be convened.
Okay, 10:55 then? Is that what I heard?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We are adjourning as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and there will be a short reconvening at the other Zoom link. So check your agendas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.